Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Train of Thoughts. My name's Trey, and this is where I share my thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets went to Minnesota, to St. Paul to play the Wild. I can't call them the Mild today because they looked pretty good. And they beat the Jets 3-2 in overtime, which, as someone that lives in Minnesota, Minnesota's awesome. It's a great place to live, but it stings a little bit when the Jets lose to the Wild. Especially, I don't know, every loss stings, but just kind of how they lost a little bit, I would say effort wise, just kind of bugs me a little bit. So let's get into it. The Jets they fell behind 1-0 less than 2 minutes into the first period. They did not come out. It didn't seem like they really got going until the second half of the first period. I would say specifically probably around 7 minutes left could start seeing them get their legs under them. So that was good. And when they were only down 1-0 after the first period, felt okay about that. But that first goal, it was a great play by the Wild, some great passing. But Patrick Laine, the guy who I ride probably the most, he's got a lot of talent offensively. And I think when he plays hard, who doesn't look at when they play hard? But there are just times where you can tell that he's just kind of like, whatever. And I think it was Foligno scored the first goal. I'm really sorry that I'm not remembering who scored the first goal for the Wild. But Laine just let him skate by him. It was just kind of like, I'll maybe try, poke check you with my, or, like stick check you, whatever. And the guy, got a gap in front of him and caught a great pass and had a wide open net. Wasn't really Hellebuyck's fault, but he was a little out of position. He, like I said, it was a great play by the Wild, but Hellebuyck overcommitted to one side and left a wide open net. But I'll say overall, besides that, Connor Hellebuyck was awesome, and he was the player of the game. Stopped 41 out of 44 shots. That's another thing to get into when you want to talk about effort. The Jets had 48 shots against the Maple Leafs the other night and lost 6-3. Today they got outshot 44-21, and they almost won. But the Wild severely outplayed them. If the Jets would have won, I would have been ecstatic, but it would have been a little bit of a steal, or a lot of a steal. So anyway, in the second period, the Jets tied the game on a power play goal 16 seconds into their power play. Who else but Mark Scheifele scored. Got a great pass from Blake Wheeler and scored. And then there were some weird sequences between the Jets' first and second goal where they had a 4-minute power play double minor. Excuse me. Yeah. And on that 4-minute double minor, it's kind of like, sweet, an opportunity to take the lead here. It lasted a few seconds because who else but Patrick Laine commits an interference penalty, and then it was a 4-on-4, and then my man who I like to Tucker Poolman got his stick a little bit too far in on the guy and got called for that. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the Jets' power play, the Wild had a power play. I know that probably doesn't make sense, but yeah, it was weird. They had a 4-on-3 power play temporarily, and then since the Jets had that 4-minute minor, they had that original 4-minute power play. Once the two Wild guys, or the two Jet guys, Line and Poolman, were back out there, which they committed their penalties like 15 seconds apart. Then the Jets had like a 1.5-minute long power play again, which they didn't score on. And then we went into the third period on another 4-minute high sticking penalty call against the Wild, where the Jets didn't score on the first half, but they had like a full 2 minutes going into the third period, and Blake Wheeler was able to score another goal for him, like playing at home. So he and Scheifele both had 2 points. Scheifele assisted on that goal on the day. Another cool thing is Neil Pionk. He assisted on Scheifele's first goal, and that was his career high for points. And he's only in like his second or third year in the league, but that's cool to see. He played 73 games last year, and now in like half a season he has his career high, which is also cool because he is a Minnesota boy as well. So nice to see him do that and do it in his home state. Kyle Connor also had an assist today. He assisted on Blake Wheeler's goal, so he continued his points tear. So talked about kind of the bad start for the Jets, and then they had pretty rough finish. After they scored to take the lead, they just pretty much sat back, and the Wild could pretty much do anything that they wanted. And the shots went from, it was like 24 to 17 after 2 periods to being like 38 to 18 at one point. It ended up the 44 to 21. At one point they were getting outshot 13-1, and the one shot that the Jets had was Wheeler's goal. So it just, they were asking to get scored upon, and since I was blacked out from watching the NHL app, and I was able to, through some other means, watch through the Wild broadcast was saying, hey, the Jets are playing back on their heels, hoping for their defense to stand up, and their defense has not been their strong point. And as I've said before, and I'll say it now, and I'll probably say it again, I want to defend the Jets defense because I know that they work really hard, but he was bang on that about the Jets cannot depend on their defense. They got to attack. And if you were to look at the puck possession for this game, Wild had to have had it like 2/3 to 3/4 at least. It seemed like of the game. They were, the first period they had it a ton. The third period they had it like even more, and they had some glorious opportunities. Luke Cunnin, I do remember that. Scored the second goal. I remember that because he's becoming a villain to the Jets because he concussed Brian Little with a questionable hit, to say the least, the last preseason game. And then he got into some scraps the last time that the two teams played, got into a fight with Bull U and such. So, yeah. It was kind of a little bit like when he was the one that scored. Then they went to overtime. Blake Wheeler committed a penalty. It kind of seems like Blake, when he commits penalties, or commits mistakes, they're at very inopportune times. And the Wild ended up scoring kind of on a controversial goal that they reviewed for goalie interference. It looked like Zach Parise did make contact with Connor Hellebuck, but he was also kind of pushed in. But Stahl scored for the Wild, and that's all she wrote. So I've gotten through my pain Now I want to know how you feel about it. Yeah, let me know in the comment section. And yeah, that's about all I got. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you really like it, please hit that subscribe button. The Jets have a busy stretch, a tough stretch. They play Montreal, who they got shellacked right before Christmas by. And then they go into Toronto, who we just played and got kind of whooped up on, even though we outshot them almost 2-1. And then they play the Boston Bruins, who are very good, but if you take Boston to overtime, you might beat them. Look it up. I think they have at least 9 overtime losses this year, so good on them to get it to overtime. But if the Jets can get it to overtime, if not beat them in regulation, but just saying. So thank you, and I will talk to you all soon.